Fear is not a wall, though it often feels like one. It is a shadow, shifting, whispering, rising in the corners of our mind where possibility and doubt collide. We think it stops us, but really, fear is a signal, a movement in the greater symphony of existence, nudging us toward the very path we were meant to walk. Without it, we would never know the edges of our courage, never discover the brilliance that only awakens when we lean into uncertainty. Life, in its divine design, uses fear not as punishment, but as invitation, an echo reminding us that growth requires risk, and freedom is found not in avoidance, but in presence. Every hesitation, every racing heartbeat is part of a larger rhythm guiding us closer to our purpose. And when we finally see fear for what it is, we uncover a truth both humbling and liberating. Fear is not the end of our story. It is the beginning of our becoming. Fear, just that word can make your chest tighten. It's the knot in your stomach before you speak up, the pounding in your chest before you take a leap, the voice in your head whispering what if you fail. We've been conditioned to believe fear is the enemy, that if you feel it, something's wrong, that it's a stop sign, a warning, a wall. But what if, stay with me here, what if fear was never meant to be your enemy at all? What if fear has always been your teacher? Think about it. Fear shows up most fiercely when something matters. You don't get scared brushing your teeth. You don't wake up terrified to drink your morning coffee. But you do feel fear when you're standing at the edge of change, when you're about to risk your comfort, when you're stepping into something that could transform you. That's not coincidence, that's design. See, life has this strange, beautiful way of communicating with us. And fear, this thing we've demonized, it's just one of the ways life speaks. Fear is the body's way of saying, hey, you're standing at the doorway of growth, pay attention. It's not punishment. It's not a flaw, it's not weakness, it's guidance. But here's the problem, we misinterpret it. Instead of seeing fear as a signal, we treat it like a stop sign. We back away, we avoid. We let fear dictate our decisions, our opportunities, even our relationships. And slowly, without even realizing it, we hand over the steering wheel of our lives. We let fear decide who we become. But what if, instead of shrinking, we got curious? Imagine standing in that moment when fear shows up, not running, not numbing, not hiding, but actually asking, what are you trying to teach me? That one question transforms the entire experience. Suddenly, fear isn't a wall, it's a mirror. And in that mirror, you see possibility. You see the truth. Fear always points toward the thing you care about most. Think back to a time in your life when you felt terrified, but you did the thing anyway. Maybe it was raising your hand in class, or moving to a new city, or starting that conversation you'd been avoiding. Remember how alive you felt afterward? That's the paradox. On the other side of fear isn't emptiness. It's expansion. Fear is just the bodyguard standing outside the door of your next level. Now, I'm not saying it's easy. Fear is loud. It's persuasive. It tells you stories about failure, rejection, humiliation. But here's the truth. Fear doesn't predict the future. Fear just reflects the size of the step you're about to take. The bigger the step, the louder it gets, which means that the moments you feel the most fear are also the moments with the most potential for growth. Let me tell you something that might change the way you see it forever. Fear and excitement are the exact same sensation in your body. Your heart races, your palms sweat, your breath shortens. Physiologically, they are identical. The only difference is the story you attach to the sensation. When you call it fear, you shrink. When you call it excitement, you expand. That means you have a choice. You get to decide what those signals mean. And that's the art of this. It's not about eliminating fear. That's impossible. Fear is part of being human. It's wired into us. The goal is to reinterpret it, to stop labeling it as the enemy and start treating it as an invitation. Because every single time fear shows up, it's an arrow pointing to your growth. So the next time you feel it, that shaky, sweaty heart, pounding energy, I want you to pause and ask yourself, what is this fear trying to show me about what I truly value? 9 times out of 10, the answer will be crystal clear. Fear shows up in the presence of meaning. And if something is meaningful enough to scare you, it is also meaningful enough to pursue. We spend so much of our lives running from fear, but here's the truth that can set you free. Fear is not here to stop you. Fear is here to teach you. It's the world's way of pointing out the exact places you're meant to grow. So, stop treating fear as the end of the road. Start treating it as the beginning of your transformation. Because fear is not your enemy. It's your greatest teacher. Fear is not the chain holding you back. It is the compass pointing you forward. Awareness is everything. You cannot face what you refuse to see. And fear, when left unnamed, grows wild in the dark corners of your mind. It multiplies in silence. It whispers louder the longer you avoid it. That's why fear feels so overwhelming, because most of the time you're wrestling with something invisible. Think about it. How many times have you felt anxious, restless, even paralyzed, but you couldn't quite put your finger on why? That's fear hiding in plain sight. It's like a shadow stretching across your path. The moment you shine a light on it, the mystery fades. The shadow doesn't vanish, but it becomes defined, contained. And once you can see it, you can choose how to move through it. Naming your fear is one of the simplest, most powerful things you can do. When you put words to it, I'm afraid of failing. I'm afraid of being judged. I'm afraid of losing what I love. You strip it of its disguise. Suddenly, it's not some vague, paralyzing fog. It's a clear statement, a fact you can work with. The truth is, most of us let fear run our lives because we don't stop long enough to notice it's there. We just react, we distract ourselves, we numb it with scrolling, food, busyness, but fear that stays unnamed runs the show. Awareness is how you take back the script. I want you to imagine fear like a child tugging on your sleeve. It doesn't need you to punish it. It doesn't need you to run from it. It just needs you to acknowledge it, to kneel down, look it in the eye, and say, I see you. That moment of awareness is the beginning of freedom. Here's the beautiful thing. The brain can't stay terrified of something once you drag it into the open. Neuroscience even backs this up. When you label an emotion, the amygdala, the part of your brain responsible for fear, begins to quiet down. You literally reduce its power just by naming it. That's not poetry, that's biology. So the next time fear shows up, don't try to push it away. Don't pretend it isn't there. Stop, breathe, ask yourself, what exactly am I afraid of right now? And don't settle for the first answer. Go deeper. If you say, I'm afraid of failing, ask, failing at what? Why does that matter? Keep peeling back the layers until you reach the core. Most often, you'll find that fear is tied to love, to something or someone deeply important to you. That realization changes everything, because then fear isn't just this random wave of anxiety. It's a signal connected to what matters most, and that gives you clarity. It gives you direction. It gives you choice. I'll tell you a secret. The things we fear naming are almost always smaller than the nightmare we imagine when we don't name them. Fear thrives on vagueness. It thrives on silence. But once you call it out, once you shine the light, you realize it's not a monster. It's just a shadow on the wall. Let me give you a practical example. Let's say you've been putting off starting a project you care about. Every time you think about it, you feel tense. You procrastinate. You tell yourself you're just not ready. But when you stop and really sit with it, you realize, I'm afraid of starting because I don't want to look stupid. I don't want people to see me fail. Boom. There it is, that clarity. That awareness changes the game because now you're not battling some invisible force. You're facing a specific fear, and once it's specific, you can decide what to do with it. Awareness doesn't mean the fear disappears. It doesn't mean the anxiety magically melts away, but it does mean you're no longer powerless. You've taken the first step. You've broken the illusion that fear is bigger than you. And from there, everything shifts, Because awareness creates choice. Without awareness, you react. With awareness, you respond. Without awareness, fear drives the car. With awareness, you take back the wheel. And isn't that what life is about? Not erasing fear, but choosing how you move with it. So when fear next shows up, don't shrink. Don't ignore it. Name it. Speak it out loud. Because the act of naming is the act of reclaiming. It's how you take the shadow and turn it into a signal. And once you do, fear stops being the thing that traps you. It becomes the thing that teaches you. You can't conquer what you won't confront, and you can't confront what you refuse to name. By now, you understand that fear isn't your enemy. It's a teacher. And you've learned that the first step in reclaiming your power is naming it, dragging it into the light, refusing to let it grow unchecked in the shadows. But let's be real. Even when you name fear, even when you know what it is, it still has a grip on you, doesn't it? That knot in your stomach doesn't just vanish. The voice in your head doesn't stop whispering. Fear doesn't dissolve with awareness alone, it lingers. It waits for you to hesitate, and hesitation is exactly where it grows strongest. Here's the truth: fear thrives in stillness. It multiplies in the gap between knowing what you want to do and actually doing it. That pause, that split second where you think about whether you're ready, whether you're good enough, whether you'll fail. That's where fear builds momentum. That's where it takes root and digs in. The longer you wait, the heavier it feels. The antidote is deceptively simple. Action, not massive, perfect, fully prepared action, just movement. Fear cannot survive in the same space as motion. The moment you shift from thinking into doing, you disrupt its rhythm. You break its pattern. Think of it like this: fear is like a fire. The more oxygen you give it, hesitation, overthinking, stalling, the bigger it burns. But the second you take action, you cut off its supply. You weaken it, you shrink it. Action is the bucket of water you throw on the flames. And let me be clear, action doesn't mean you have to leap off a cliff or overhaul your life in one grand gesture. Action can be as small as sending the email you've been avoiding, making the phone call, writing the first sentence, standing up when every part of you wants to stay seated. Small steps matter. In fact, they matter more than the big ones because they're doable. They build momentum. They prove to you that fear doesn't control you. We get stuck because we wait for the fear to go away before we act. We think, I'll do it when I'm not scared anymore. But that's not how it works. Fear doesn't leave before you move. It leaves because you move. I'll give you an example. Imagine you're standing at the edge of a pool. You want to jump in, but the water looks cold. You hesitate. The longer you stand there, the harder it gets. Your mind invents excuses. What if it's freezing? What if I belly flop? What if everyone stares? But the second you jump, before your brain can list 1,000 reasons not to, you're in, and suddenly the thing that felt unbearable becomes manageable. That's how action works. It doesn't erase fear beforehand. It dissolves fear after, and here's the really fascinating part. Your brain learns from your actions, not your intentions. You can tell yourself all day long that you're brave, that you're ready, that you're capable. But your brain doesn't believe words. It believes evidence. Every time you act in the presence of fear, you create evidence that you can handle it. And the more evidence you stack, the less power fear has over you. This is why waiting for confidence before you move is a trap. Confidence is not the prerequisite for action. It's the result of it. You earn confidence by acting despite fear. You build courage one choice, one step, one interruption at a time. So, the next time you feel fear creeping in, don't negotiate with it. Don't give it time to spread its roots. Interrupt it. Take one small action in the opposite direction. Move your body, move your mouth, move your mind into motion. It doesn't have to be perfect. It doesn't have to be big. It just has to be something. And here's the magic. The moment you act, fear loses its momentum and you gain yours. Fear shrinks and you expand. Fear hesitates and you accelerate. That shift, That reversal is how you reclaim your power. I know what you're thinking, but what if I fail? And here's the answer: you might, that's life. But failure is never as dangerous as staying stuck. Inaction guarantees regret. Action at least guarantees growth. The truth is, the scariest place to live is in hesitation. It's in that limbo where you're not moving forward, but you're not backing out either. You're just suspended, waiting, overthinking, letting fear grow stronger by the second. That's not living. That's fear writing your story. But when you act, when you disrupt fear's momentum, you flip the script. You stop being the passenger and start being the driver. You remind yourself that fear may ride along, but it does not hold the wheel. So don't wait until you're ready. Don't wait until you're fearless. That day will never come. Move now, move scared, move imperfectly, because the second you act, you win. Fear gathers its strength in hesitation, but the moment you move, you take its power and make it your own. We've talked about fear as a teacher. We've talked about the importance of naming it, and we've explored how action disrupts its grip. But there's still something deeper to address, the place where fear often hides most powerfully, the unknown. The truth is, much of what we fear isn't the thing itself. It's the not knowing. It's the empty space where outcomes haven't yet taken form. That silence, that mystery, that uncertainty, our brains hate it. They crave control, predictability, guarantees. And when they don't get them, fear rushes in to fill the space. Think about it. How many of your greatest worries come from not knowing what will happen next? Will this relationship last? Will I succeed if I try? What if I take the leap and it doesn't work? That fog of uncertainty is where fear thrives. But what if you could see that fog differently? What if instead of treating it as a void to be terrified of, you could honor it as sacred ground? Because that's what the unknown really is: possibility, infinite possibility, a field of outcomes not yet decided, a canvas that has not yet been painted. That space you fear so much, the uncertainty, is actually the very space where growth, change, and creation lie. Without it, nothing new could ever be born. If everything in life were guaranteed, if every step had a map, if every outcome were certain, there would be no adventure, no discovery, no transformation. You'd just be walking a straight line to a predetermined end, and let's be honest, that sounds less like living and more like a prison. The unknown is where life expands. It's where your courage is tested, where your imagination awakens, where your faith, whatever faith means to you, gets its chance to breathe. Uncertainty is not a punishment. It's an invitation. An invitation to lean into trust, to allow life to surprise you, to dance with the mystery instead of fighting against it. And I know that sounds beautiful in theory, but in practice it's terrifying. Because the unknown asks you to surrender control. It asks you to step into a space where you can't predict the ending. But here's the irony: we never really had control to begin with. That was always an illusion. Life has always been unpredictable. You don't control the timing, the twists, the detours. What you do control is how you meet them. So when fear starts whispering in the face of uncertainty, you have a choice. You can tighten your grip, resist, and let that fear paralyze you. Or you can take a breath, loosen your grip, and reframe it. Instead of saying, "I don't know what will happen, and that terrifies me," you shift to, "I don't know what will happen, and that means anything is possible." Do you feel the difference? One frame shrinks you, the other expands you. One frame puts you at war with reality, the other allows you to dance with it. Every great story begins in uncertainty. Every breakthrough in science, in art, in love, in personal growth. It all begins with someone stepping into the unknown, not with certainty, but with courage, not with guarantees, but with faith that something valuable can be born from the mystery. And here's the paradox: the more you resist uncertainty, the scarier it feels. But the more you lean into it, the more alive you become. Because in uncertainty, every day carries the chance of surprise. Every step holds the possibility of discovery. Every moment is alive with the sacred tension of what could be. So what if, instead of fearing uncertainty, you began to honor it? What if, when life handed you the unknown, you whispered, "This is the space where miracles happen"? Because it is. Think back to some of the most beautiful turns in your life, the people you met unexpectedly, the opportunities that appeared out of nowhere, the lessons that shaped you in ways you never could have planned. None of those came from certainty. They came from the unknown. The truth is, fear convinces us that uncertainty is danger, but in reality, uncertainty is possibility disguised. It's life's way of saying, there's more available to you than you can see right now. So, when you stand in the fog of the unknown, don't let fear write the story. Instead, ask yourself, what if this uncertainty isn't a threat, but a gift? What if this blank space is where the best part of my life is waiting to unfold? Because that shift in perspective changes everything. It doesn't erase the fear, but it transforms the way you hold it. Suddenly, the unknown is no longer a void. It's a sacred horizon. The unknown isn't where your fear wins. It's where your future is born. We've walked through fear's disguise as uncertainty, how it hides in the fog of the unknown. Now let's talk about something that grounds you when the fog gets thick. Because here's the truth, courage is not a one-time event. It's not a single leap off the cliff that solves everything forever. Courage is a practice, and just like any practice, it requires rhythm, ritual, and repetition. If you only rely on courage in the big moments, when the stakes are high and your heart is racing, you'll always feel like you're scrambling to catch up. Fear will feel bigger than it is, and you'll feel smaller than you are. But when you build rituals into your daily life that anchor you, courage stops being an occasional guest. It becomes the ground you walk on. Think about it like brushing your teeth. You don't wake up in the morning and ask, "Do I feel brave enough to brush my teeth today?" No, you do it automatically because it's part of who you are. That's the power of ritual. It takes something that could feel hard and makes it habitual. And when you make courage a habit, fear doesn't stand a chance. Now, these rituals don't have to be complicated or dramatic. In fact, the simpler they are, the stronger they become. For some of you, it might look like a morning practice, a few minutes of stillness where you set your intention for the day, reminding yourself of who you are and what matters most. For others, it might be a physical ritual, moving your body, walking outside, taking one small action before fear has a chance to grab hold. The form doesn't matter as much as the consistency. What matters is that you are training yourself every single day to step into courage before fear takes root. Here's why this works. Fear loves chaos. It thrives in uncertainty, in lack of structure, in days that feel scattered and reactive. Rituals create anchors. They give your mind and body something solid to hold onto when the waves rise. When you begin your day with practices that remind you of your strength, you're no longer tossed around by fear. You're centered in the middle of it. I'll give you an example. Maybe fear shows up every time you sit down to work on a project you've been procrastinating on. Your ritual could be as simple as setting a timer for 5 minutes and starting, no matter what. Maybe fear shows up every time you're about to walk into a meeting. Your ritual could be pausing, taking 3 deep breaths, and repeating a phrase that anchors you. I belong here. Small things, repeated daily, carve grooves of courage into your brain. And over time, something amazing happens. Fear might still show up, but it doesn't knock you over anymore. Why? Because your rituals have taught your nervous system how to respond. You've trained yourself to meet fear with action, with grounding, with presence. It's no longer the loudest voice in the room. But here's what most people get wrong. They think courage is about grand gestures, about slaying dragons in one big dramatic battle. It's not. Courage is built in the smallest moments. It's built every time you choose to act when you don't feel ready. It's built every time you start before you're certain. It's built every time you practice a ritual that centers you in your own strength. Those daily, almost invisible choices. That's where real power lives, and this is where your relationship with yourself begins to shift. Because when you practice daily rituals that anchor courage, you start to trust yourself. You prove to yourself over and over again that you can show up. And when you trust yourself, fear loses its grip. Because at the end of the day, fear is really about doubt. Doubt that you can handle what comes. When you show yourself that you can, daily, the doubt shrinks. Let me be real, fear will never completely go away. It will always try to show up, especially when you're stepping into something meaningful. But when you've built courage into your daily rhythm, fear becomes background noise. It may still whisper, but it no longer dictates your choices. You become anchored, steady, unshaken, and that's the beauty of ritual. It's not about perfection, it's about presence. It's about building a foundation so strong that even when fear knocks, it can't topple you. And once that foundation is laid, you can step into the unknown not with trembling hesitation, but with grounded confidence. Because you're not relying on a sudden burst of bravery, you're standing on a well-worn path of practiced courage. So here's the invitation. Don't wait for courage to show up when you need it most. Build it, piece by piece, ritual by ritual, day by day. Anchor yourself in small acts of bravery that, over time, create an unshakable life. Courage isn't built in the grand leaps. It's forged in the quiet rituals that teach you, day after day, that fear will never have the final word. By now, we've looked at fear from so many angles. How it disguises itself, how it thrives in the unknown, how it can be reframed, disrupted, and softened by daily rituals of courage. But there's one final layer to peel back, and this one is deeper than all the others. It's the part of the conversation that goes beyond the mechanics of dealing with fear. It asks a bigger question: what are you living for? Because here's the thing, fear doesn't vanish just because you name it, or act through it, or build rituals to anchor yourself. Fear becomes smaller when you're living for something bigger than it. When you're aligned with a purpose that feels greater than your own comfort, fear can still whisper, but it will never be able to command your steps. Think about the times in your life when you felt unstoppable. I don't mean confident, I mean absolutely unstoppable, the kind of energy that made fear irrelevant. Chances are those weren't moments when you were playing it safe. They were moments when you were moved by something beyond yourself. Maybe it was love. Maybe it was protecting someone you cared about. Maybe it was a vision you couldn't let go of, an idea that kept you awake at night. That's what purpose does. It pulls you forward. It realigns your perspective so that fear becomes a speed bump instead of a dead end. When you know why you're doing something, when you feel the deeper thread of meaning in your actions, fear might still show up, but it no longer feels like the point. The point is the purpose, and fear just becomes part of the terrain you walk through to get there. This is why aligning with purpose is the ultimate antidote to fear. Fear thrives in self-protection, in the small space where it's only about you, but purpose expands the space. Purpose reminds you that it's not just about your nerves, your doubt, your comfort. It's about the contribution you're here to make, the life you're here to live, the impact you're here to have. And when you shift your attention from protecting yourself to serving that bigger vision, fear loses its leverage. Now, here's where people get stuck. They think purpose has to be some grand, world-changing mission, something massive and perfect. It doesn't. Purpose isn't about scale, it's about alignment. It's about knowing what matters to you and allowing that to shape your choices. Maybe your purpose is raising your kids with love. Maybe it's creating art that moves people. Maybe it's building a business, writing a book, or simply living with integrity in a way that inspires the people around you. Whatever it is, it only has to be true to you. And when you live in alignment with it, you stop letting fear decide what's possible, because fear will always argue for your limitations. Purpose argues for your expansion. Fear says, stay small, stay safe. A purpose says, step forward. Your life depends on it. I want you to imagine for a moment that your life is a story. Fear wants to be the author. It wants to write you into a plot where you never risk, never stretch, never leap. But purpose is the ink. It's the deeper narrative thread that makes the story worth reading. When you let purpose guide the pen, you're no longer just surviving the chapters. You're creating something that matters. And here's the most liberating truth. Your purpose is already inside you. It's not something you have to chase. It's not out there waiting for you to find it like a hidden treasure. It's already woven into your experiences, your desires, your values, the things that make you come alive. Fear tries to cloud it, but it's there, always. So what does it mean to align with it? It means you stop making choices from fear, choices designed to avoid discomfort, and you start making choices from alignment, from what feels true and meaningful, even if it's scary. And yes, that's where fear shows up the loudest, but it's also where life shows up the fullest. Because here's the paradox, fear is loudest at the edge of purpose. But that's exactly the signal you need to keep going. Fear doesn't mean you're on the wrong path. More often than not, it means you're exactly where you need to be. So the next time fear rises up, don't just ask, how do I get rid of this? Instead, ask, what purpose is fear trying to protect me from stepping into? What part of my life is asking me to expand? And then, align. Anchor into your rituals, lean into the unknown, and let purpose pull you forward. Because when your life is aligned with purpose, fear is no longer a wall. It's just the wind on your face as you walk toward what matters most. Fear loses its power the moment your purpose becomes louder than your doubt.